This is Actualized Freedom, straight talk on growing clicks and conversions on Amazon FBA from people doing it every day. Now here's your host, digital marketing acrobat, Danny Kenji Carlson.
Today's episode of the Actualized Freedom podcast is sponsored by the new e-commerce podcast, The E-Commerce Leader, giving big thinking for small business. It's designed for e-commerce leaders eager to grow and protect their business. It's co-hosted by Jason Miles, Shopify store owner and educator, and Michael Veazey, an Amazon specialist. Just search for The E-Commerce Leader in your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here with the Actualized Freedom Podcast, and here we have Mr. Jordan West from Mindful Marketing, and this is going to be a really interesting episode if you're interested in off-Amazon external marketing strategies. So a lot of you know how to do Amazon, you know how to launch your products on Amazon, but maybe you're not as comfortable with, how do you use Facebook groups and how do you use other strategies to then either drive traffic to your own Amazon products or potentially build out your own e-commerce store. So that's what Jordan and I are going to get into today on this episode. And I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Mr. Jordan West over there in Canada. How are you doing, Jordan?
Danny, I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me on here today. It's a pleasure.
Oh, good to have you on here. I haven't talked to another Canadian from the same area as me in a while, and I can recognize the accent. You guys listening, maybe you can hear we have similar kind of accents, but it's funny when you're away from your home for about 2 years, like I've been now, you start to recognize your own accent as a funny accent. It's pretty funny.
Totally. I feel like I'm talking to Americans all day, and as soon as a Canadian comes on, I'm like, oh, you're a Canadian just like me. Oh, this is so nice. We get each other,
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. And so, Jordan, let's start with a little bit of your background when it comes to e-commerce. Just give us a high-level overview of, your journey in e-commerce and how you got to where you are today.
Totally. Well, it actually started before e-commerce. So I purchased a Taco Del Mar restaurant when I was 23 years old. I thought it was going to be awesome. I was like, I'm going to learn business. And I had that for about 5 years, lost about 150 grand in the process. But I learned a lot throughout that process. And I learned how to actually get people in the store using Facebook. So it was just like kind of early days of Facebook. I think this is 2011 is when I bought it. And so organically, we were just getting people in the store just through Facebook. And I thought, oh man, I can totally do this with other businesses. So just at the end of when I had the store, I started a drop shipping site selling hoverboards. So this is like right during the hoverboard craze. And it's funny, I never talk about the hoverboards on podcasts. And I think we did okay with the hoverboard store, but the problem was there was just so many returns and we were drop shipping from China and it was a pain. So throughout all of this, my wife and I realized that there was a need in the market for a particular kind of baby legging. And so her being a fashion designer, she decided to design this legging that would go over top of cloth diapers. And people loved it. And we brought it to markets and people would just go crazy over these leggings. And so I asked her, hey, can I start marketing this on Facebook? And just trying out, I think newsfeed ads had like just kind of become a thing at the time. And I look back on those first advertisements that we did on Facebook, and our return on ad spend was like 90, which for anyone who knows anything about Facebook ads, it's just crazy, like $1 in, $90 out. And we were just getting insane results. We'd sell out of everything. Well, fast forward about 5 or 6 years now, and we're a mid-7-figure brand serving, the baby niche, the kids and women. And so from there, I ended up starting a marketing agency that helps brands off of Amazon grow using Facebook and Google, and really building true brands.
Yeah, I could imagine how, as a 23-year-old, owning a Taco Del Mar would be the coolest thing ever, and probably sounded like the best idea at the time, right? It's like, yeah, I'm going to own this Taco Del Mar, and I can eat all the tacos I could possibly ever want and make a bunch of money. It's going to be amazing. But it's really interesting to hear that that's actually what really got you into the digital marketing in the first place, was owning a physical business and bringing in customers into the physical business. And, as someone who has been around in the beginning of Facebook ads, it's very interesting to hear that you had a 90, a ROAS of 90, return on ad spend of 90, which is totally insane. And obviously the numbers are usually a little bit different today, but tell me a little bit about when you started and the ROAS was 90 and today, like how has that whole Facebook ads ecosystem evolved for you guys? Like, has it gotten way more complicated? Like, is what worked back then is different than what's working now? Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, some of the principles are the same, right? So before, interestingly, that return on ad spend of 90 was actually not even on a conversion campaign. So I wasn't even telling Facebook to go and get me conversions. It was just an engagement campaign. I was like, oh, I'll just put this in front of people that are going to engage with it. So that's the kind of things you could do back then, right? Where like there was very little competition. People still didn't even believe in Facebook ads. Like during my last little bit at Taco Del Mar, we were owned by Subway at the time, and the Subway, I told them, I was like, guys, we got to get into Facebook advertising. Like, this is huge. And I remember our head of marketing at the whole corporation said, Facebook ads don't work. I said, they just don't drive traffic. And I mean, my entire empire now has been built on Facebook ads. Like, of course it works. Of course it drives traffic. It's way different now, right? Like if you're marketing in Canada, so we still, with our clothing company, we're generally still marketing within Canada, and we have had an incredible year during 2020. Our return on ad spend, spending about 400,000. Our return on ad spend has been 10. 10 has been our return on ad spend, which is just crazy, right? So we've made $4 million from Facebook ads alone. Been a really, really good year for that in Canada. We work with a lot of American clients, and we're not seeing those kind of numbers at all in the States. Competition is a lot higher in the States. And I think that, brands can be happy now doing a return on ad spend of about 3 on the first purchase. That's what we're seeing as a really good number. And setting that 3 as a really good expectation, and then getting a little bit higher after that. So it's different for your listeners who are used to Amazon, where you're getting a bit of a higher return on ad spend, especially on your paid traffic, right? It's not the same. It's not the same. It's a different experience building a brand off of Amazon.
Yeah, and it's got to be very different goals with your ads too. So on Amazon, people probably have some different goals. For example, it actually makes a lot of sense in most cases to drive sales from Amazon ads at a break-even cost. So you're just breaking even on every sale because it's driving targeted keyword traffic to help you rank organically for your top search terms. And then you're getting organic sales from that. Whereas, on Facebook ads, maybe that doesn't necessarily make sense. But in some cases, maybe it would, right? If you do have a really good back end where you're breaking even on the first purchase from that client or from that customer, and then you're hitting them with some email sequences, some retargeting ads, some upsells and things like that, and you can make your money there. So what I'm hearing from you is that the United States market for Facebook ads is just getting more competitive, right? So are you starting to see a shift to a strategy of just like essentially having to have a good back end on Facebook ads in order to be really successful? Like you said, you're not making crazy returns on the first purchase from the customer, but are you seeing the need to really focus on the back end for repeat purchases and upsells and things like that in order for people to be successful these days in the States?
Totally. So what I'm seeing work really well in brands that we're looking at acquiring right now are ones that have high customer lifetime value. I'm actually looking at acquiring brands that don't have high customer lifetime value, and then implementing that into the back end of those brands, right? Because those are that's really where you're going to get your value, right? You cannot acquire a customer for less than about $25 on Facebook, right? So you've got to think your average order value has to be higher, and your customer lifetime value has to be higher. But once you acquire them, it is well worth it. Like you can be incredibly profitable on Facebook ads. It's just that nowadays you can't be as profitable on that first sale. So I think you've nailed it.
Yeah. And so what are some of those things there? Can you give us some examples of how do you squeeze the juice? How do you get that good customer lifetime value with the infrastructure in your brand? Is that more products? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, totally. So it's constantly releasing products, especially for our clothing company, right? We're releasing products almost on a weekly basis, right? And that's something that we can do on the clothing side. One of the ways that we're really being able to capture that lifetime value is putting people into a VIP group, right? So we have a VIP group on Facebook that's made up of about 8,000 members right now. We've also got an SMS list that we treat as our VIP group as well. And we give them early access to sales and to new releases. And so that's been a really incredible way that we've actually seen our lifetime value increase. So we've seen it increase about 20% since we implemented the VIP group. And I think a lot of that has to do with us being a little bit more top of mind with the VIP group, and also people just egging each other on to purchase more items within that group.
And what are some of the ways that you incentivize that? Are you running like competitions or limited time promotions to that group? What are some examples of the things that you're posting in there?
Well, what we'll actually do with the VIP group a lot of times is we'll just ask their opinion on new product launches. So, recently for Christmas, we were asking them about 2 graphics that we had. And we just poll them, and we'll get like 1,000 responses within the group on a poll, which is amazing. So we asked them about these 2 graphics, and our VIP group told us that they did not like either one of the graphics. And so we went back to the drawing board. We're like, okay, we're not going to release these because we had about 1,000 responses telling us, no, we do not like this graphic. So that's an incredible way. So we ended up releasing a new graphic, selling out within about, I don't know, an hour of that collection, which was awesome. So really getting a lot of good feedback within that group. The incentive for them is that they're going to get early access to things. And because our brand is known to sell out very quick, people want that early access. They want that exclusivity. So that's how we get them into these groups. The way that we get them into the groups is when somebody makes a purchase for the first time, we send them a personalized thank you video with their name, with what they've purchased, everything like that. And then we ask them to join the VIP group. So we're constantly having people join the VIP group. That's the main way that people get in unless they find us. But it's also a group where we have to allow them in. A lot of brands try and get into the group, and we don't allow other brands to get in. But specific members will allow into the group.
And from a technology standpoint, are you using a tool like Bonjour to create those customizable videos to send off to the customers? It's a great tool we've been using as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Bonjour is incredible. I know the guys pretty well over there now because we've started an agency program with them as well, trying to implement this for clients. Just an amazing tool to be able to use. I can't think of a better tool out there for this specific use case.
Yeah, and there's so many good use cases. And for those of you who haven't heard of Bonjour, it's just a software tool where essentially you can set up some kind of automations where, you get a notification when someone joins the Facebook group, and then it'll tell you to make your Facebook group video. And you just, on your phone or whatever, you just film a quick little video introducing them to the Facebook group, and then boom, it uploads, sends off to them with an email template. Really, really, really handy tool for creating that, scaling up that kind of personal connection with your customers, right?
Totally. It's scaling the unscalable, right? Like I use it at our agency all the time too. And for our mastermind, our e-commerce mastermind that we have, constantly sending out, it's the one place that I'm really fine spending a lot of time on because it pays back. And it really actually creates a real connection between you and the other person. And when you're sending them a personalized video like that, and it shows that like, it would have taken you the same amount of time to send them a quick email. Might as well send them a video.
Totally. Yeah. And like not many people are doing that, right? Still a pretty new kind of tactic. People haven't caught on to it. And it's not a tactic you can just automate completely, right? It does take that personal connection and being comfortable in front of the camera and those kind of things. So I don't think it will just become spammed out, just like, automated emails and things like that.
No, absolutely not. It takes a lot of work, right? So I don't think that this is something that everyone's going to hop on.
Oh, absolutely. And you have another story that I think is going to be really interesting to dive into. I haven't heard all the details about this, but that just sounds too juicy not to dive into. So let's hear how you made $250,000 of e-commerce sales in 24 hours without using Facebook ads or discounts. What's that story all about?
Yeah, totally. So this actually ties in really well with the VIP group. So this is the gated launch strategy. So I love this strategy. This isn't for new brands, this strategy. This is for people who have already built up a really good following. So what we did, and what we continue to do, because we use this strategy all the time, is we give early access to our VIP members. So what we do is we password protect the website. We get the new sale or the new launch, whatever it is, ready. With this particular sale, it was a launch, right? So we were launching a whole new product line. For the 2 weeks before, on all of our social channels, we let people know about the launch. We let them know that we were going to be doing this. We let them know, hey, if you want early access to the launch, join our SMS list or our VIP group. And so people would join, and right at 10 o'clock Pacific, we let them know the password to the website. At that point, I think like right away, we had about 3,000 people on the website. In the first 2 hours during that gated period, we did 120,000 in sales. And there's no discounts on this, right? This is just pure e-commerce sales, full profit. We were just like blown away. We hadn't had a launch anywhere close to that. I think our biggest sale before that was maybe 150K in a day. And that would have been like a Black Friday sale or something. So like we'd never seen numbers like that before, and they just continued to pour in and pour in. And there's this psychology around it, right? There's this exclusivity of them having to find a password and be in the know of the password. Second, there's like this micro commitment of them going to the website, plugging in a password, and then getting to the site. And now they've made that first commitment. So making the second commitment of, adding to cart isn't a big deal. And now they've made that commitment. And now the next commitment is adding their payment details. And then the next commitment is actually purchasing. And we just drove, I just couldn't believe the amount of business that we drove doing that. And it's a really simple process, but it's years in the making as well, right? So we haven't seen since that launch, we haven't seen numbers quite that high, but we haven't had a massive launch since then. Almost every gated launch that we do is at least 100K now, though.
That's very interesting. What do you think is the psychology behind that? Do you think it's coming into FOMO, the people's fear of missing out on the exclusivity of the kind of launch? What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I think that's what it is. So we built into the customer the knowledge that we're probably going to sell out of certain sizes, right? And it's because we still produce everything in Canada. So fabric all comes from China, but we still produce all of our clothing in Canada. And so we can't have tons and tons of inventory at all times. We still have a lot of inventory. We're probably carrying about $1 million of inventory at a time, but we can't just have this mass amount of inventory. And so people understand like, hey, these guys are going to sell out. And so there is a legitimate fear of selling out and a legitimate scarcity. That's not just like this false scarcity that we built.
Yeah. And this comes from training your customers over time, right? Like it probably wouldn't work if it was just something you tried to manufacture from time to time and there was no scarcity. Then all of a sudden you try to make a scarcity sale. It's not going to have the same effect, right?
Not at all. No. I think it has to be some genuine scarcity. Now, we've seen this work with other brands as well. We do this with brands at our agency, and it works incredibly well. It's just that it is a longer process, right? You have to be a brand. You have to have these VIPs. You have to have people who love your brand, right? And I think that's the first step.
Right. And then so walk the listeners through, because a lot of listeners are thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but how the heck do I build one of these VIP groups and that kind of brand? Right. So like walk us through in the beginning, like where did you start? Like what was step number one of, okay, I realized I want to build this kind of VIP group, and then I want to create this whole brand and exclusivity and everything like that. How did you really construct that?
Well, I don't think that brands can start it from scratch, right? I think that they already have to have a product that people love, right? And that people are already talking about. And so we already had that. And so what we did is we took, from our lists that we already had, so our Instagram followers and our email list and our Facebook followers, and we started letting them know about this VIP group at that point. And so that's what I would recommend to your listeners to slowly build out, right? And then give them a reason to get into that VIP group, right? So, whether that's a discount, and sometimes people do need to discount to get somebody into a group like that, right? give them some sort of reason to get into the group, and then slowly build it from there. And you will see that pay off 100 times your effort that you've put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the scarcity tactic, give a little more details too about these limited releases. So like exactly like how many units do you have to give away in each one of these releases? And like give a little bit more details about that whole side of things.
Yeah, so generally we've got, per size. So each item itself has about 10 sizes. And then each size generally will be running about, for the big sizes, about 100 per item. But then we have a bunch of different colorways. So we don't know before we launch what's going to be the most popular, right? We've got an idea, but until people actually pay for it, we don't know. So maybe we'll make 100 of each size, and then we figure out what's going to go. And lots of times we'll sell out of those sizes. So generally on the baby side, 3, 4, that age, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 tends to sell out pretty quick. So we'll sometimes up those sizes, just knowing from past. But it's not a lot. It's not tons and tons of inventory. But it ends up being, when you look across 550 SKUs, it is a lot of inventory to hold at one time.
And are you conscious of not fulfilling the crazy need of the customers? So an example is if you have a design that just sells out super quick and you just having so many customers just message you, be like, oh, hey, like I missed out on this one, but I really want it. Like, are you guys doing it again? Are you being conscious to keep that scarcity kind of mentality intact by not fulfilling that need again? So not doing a second production run when you've kind of told them that this is the exclusive production run and get that scarcity going? Or are you trying to squeeze the juice and are you actually fulfilling those second production runs of the really popular ones?
Yeah, we'll actually attempt to do a second production run. Luckily, because we do produce so close to home, we're able to turn those around pretty fast. So we do our best to be able to restock, and those restock days are generally pretty crazy as well, right? So we let people know, hey, we're going to be restocking this. It's like a secondary type of launch on those days.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, Amazon sellers can all relate very much to the Amazon launch of maybe launching the product on Amazon for the first time, trying to rank for the first keyword, and then that works well, and then trying to rank for the second keyword. But what I'm hearing from you is you're doing a launch, like even maybe a launch when it comes to amounts of inventory. And that's where Amazon and your style of e-commerce really differ, is that you really don't want to go out of stock on Amazon. That's like kind of the death sentence as far as your ranking algorithm. You don't want to get a production run of 100 and then sell out the whole thing and then be out of stock for 2 months, because then your ranking totally goes down. But what I'm hearing from you is that this can be a really beneficial business model for off Amazon, because as long as you have other SKUs that you can be rotating through and you're still making sales, then you can take advantage of that scarcity in a much more powerful way than on Amazon. Because on Amazon, you don't necessarily ever want to create that scarcity because you don't want to go out of stock. You always want to be keeping it in stock.
Yes, totally. That's exactly where we differ. And that's one big reason why our brand has never gone on Amazon, is we're pretty scared about that. And we don't want to, we just don't want that to happen, right? We want to do it right. And I don't think we can do it right now.
Yeah, certainly a totally different beast. So Jordan, what else is really working as far as your e-commerce brand off of Amazon? I know a lot of Amazon sellers, they have some basic understanding of, Google ads and these kind of things, but most people listening are not really going to have a true understanding of what's working. They're probably seen some YouTube videos of someone who's maybe told them something, but they're not really doing the real numbers to prove that it's working, right? And you are. So what you got?
Yeah, totally. So what I talk about all the time is offer, right? If you have a good offer, that is going to outweigh anything that you do on Facebook. Having just a really good product that people like. So what's working right now is getting people onto lists. Our SMS list is performing incredibly well. I actually just looked at it. In the last 30 days, it's produced an extra $130,000 for us. That SMS list is absolutely incredible. That Messenger as well, pushing people into our Messenger list. So we have a capture for Messenger. on our list as well. Anywhere that you can capture people's info is working well. So I would never run Facebook ads without really good lead capture on your site, offering some sort of discount or some sort of exclusive deal to get them into any of those lists. And then email, of course. Email is always going to be one of your number one revenue drivers. But what's working on Facebook right now is just testing like absolute crazy. It is, different creative in different ad sets all the time. And it's having to be okay with the increased costs on Facebook, especially this time of year. October was brutal. Have never seen numbers like that across a lot of the brands that we work with. October was horrendous.
Yeah, and so it comes a lot more down to having a good product and really good creatives to kind of combat that, right? Is that what you're saying? Like if you have a really generic product with some really generic looking creatives, you're just competing on, the bids is what you're competing against for the other ads, right? But like if you do have that better creatives and the better brands, it's going to give you a little edge.
Totally. And for people who are, really heavily invested in Amazon, one of the biggest things that I could say, because we actually we'll talk to people all the time that want to diversify, right? And go straight with the Shopify route as well. But it's a totally different game. You are building a brand, a full brand, right? And people buy from brands on Facebook. They're not buying products necessarily, right? So, that single funnel sort of product is more or less dead, in my opinion. If you're just trying to sell a single product, whereas brand-centric marketing is really working. Also, just one quick aside of what's working on Facebook right now is high frequency. So the amount of times that people are seeing your brand on Facebook, that those high frequency brands are doing incredibly well. At our brand, Little and Lively, our frequency is generally around 30 for our retargeting. So people are seeing our ads about 30 times. And that's why we have this high return on ad spend, in my opinion, is that you need to show your brand that many times, right? People scroll so fast, and you need to show them different creative. So I'm not saying show the same ad 30 times. I'm saying show them a variety of different ads and offers within what you're within your product catalog, and different types of ads. And you will be successful on Facebook.
Yeah, it's such an important point that you're bringing up here. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong or get really discouraged or confused when it comes to paid ads and just tracking your marketing and everything like that. Like everyone expects their marketing to be perfect and perfectly measurable. And, if it's not working, you shut it off right away without realizing that your average customer probably had, between 6 and 25 or 30 touch points before they actually made your purchase. So where is that going to be attributed to? Should that be attributed to the email that they clicked, or the first ad that they initially saw your brand, or the last ad that they saw on Instagram on a different platform that I currently did that? And it's usually very, very complicated customer path. And we know this, we ask all of our clients for the agency at Kenji ROI here, how they found us. And some of them will tell us something simple, but the ones who really go into the full story will have told us like 6 or 7 touch points. And that's just what they're aware of. That's they're not telling me about the 4 ads they saw on Facebook and the 3 ads they saw over on Google Display Network and things like that. So where I think a lot of people go wrong is they just expect to turn on Facebook ads and just like, okay, this ad campaign is not getting me direct sales, and so I'm going to shut it off, without realizing that, maybe that's actually getting you that extra touch point that is working with the rest of your marketing ecosystem to get that customer across the line. What do you think about that?
Yes, 100%. We in my mastermind that I run, we chatted about that this week with TikTok traffic, right? TikTok is really bad for tracking over. But the fact is, some of these huge, 8-figure brands started TikTok and their sales went up. And it's so hard to track, right? Like we're like, okay, sometimes what you have to do, and I know this is like, not the best advice, is just look at advertising money versus money at the end of the day, right? Okay, something's working, and then dig into the details of like, okay, well, what was driving that traffic? Was it that cold campaign? There are certain services that you can use. Hyros is one of them that tracks across multiple IP addresses. It tracks across multiple email addresses, and it creates one customer out of them. And that's super cool. Most brands can't afford that. But what you can afford to do is put UTMs on all of your ads, so that you can at least track that through Google Analytics.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I totally agree. It's basically impossible to have accurate tracking unless you're using something like Hyros, or even UTM codes for most people is going to be well above their technical abilities and understanding. Yeah. So having a good understanding that, you don't necessarily have to see a direct return from your ads coming up, as long as you're seeing your overall sales go up, and just realize you're creating that ecosystem, you're creating that perception.
Totally.
Probably is getting your customers across the finish line. I think is very important to realize in today's marketing, because like you said, those big brands, they've realized forever that, marketing spend is just that's the cost of doing business. Like Coca-Cola spends, untold amounts of money on advertising that is impossible to track, right? They have freaking here in Indonesia, they have banners, they sponsor little shops, little shops that are owned by Wayan down the road, that he's, selling chocolate bars, and they're just blasting these posters out to these guys, right? Of course, there's no way to track that kind of stuff, but they just realize they got to spend to stay on top.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I've been loving lately is post-purchase surveys. I just like to ask people, where do you think you heard about us, right? Or we just ask them, where did you hear about us? I like to know what the most impactful part is. For us, we're finding it's about 50% word of mouth. Super interesting, right? That's where they're saying they got it. A lot more of that. Sorry, it's about equal actually social and word of mouth. And then we're in a lot of stores across Canada as well. So about 10% of people are saying they're finding us from stores. That's interesting to me. That data is super, super interesting. And I love to parse it all together with actual data from UTM and Hyros and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just about whether it's working or not. That's really what it comes down to.
Oh, totally. Because I've driven myself absolutely insane certain times trying to get my tracking perfect and trying to really get that, digital marketing promises the perfect, directly measurable ROI and all this kind of stuff. And, on paper it does, but in reality, not exactly. So important to keep in mind.
No.
For sure. So awesome, Jordan. This has been a really interesting conversation. We went a lot of different places. If people want to learn more about you or reach out to you online, where can they do so?
Yeah, so the number one place would be LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So you can just search for Jordan West, or I'm Jordan-West-Marketer. And then if you want to find out more, if you're thinking about, diversifying and going off of Amazon or also, off of Amazon, you can check us out at mindfulmarketing.co.
Right. And it's also a podcast you have, right? Mindful Marketing Podcast. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I host the Secrets to Scaling Your E-commerce Brand podcast. So if you just search Secrets to Scaling, we're going to be the number one that comes up there. And we bring on a lot of direct to consumer CMOs, CEOs of those brands. We recently had Movement Watches on, really, really great success story there. Please feel free to listen there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jordan. And this is really valuable. And guys, we'll put all of those links and everything in the show notes, as always, at kenjiroi.com/blog. And definitely reach out to Jordan, because he knows what the heck he's doing. He's got a really interesting brand on his hands. So thanks so much for your time, Jordan. And until next time, guys, go out there and kick some ass.
For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, visit kenjiroi.com.